talking to the Western audience because I want to see, like, I want to say, like, this is what they see. I mean, for example, there is a very famous video for Samuel Abu Za'anin, who is like a young kid that he was shot point blank by an Israeli soldier, and he was not allowed to have any medical attention. And as his dead body was being put into the ambulance, the Jewish settlers were cheering. So for an Arab audience, this is what we see every day. So when they see, oh, we heard them back, we heard their people like they heard back, it is not right. But this is what hate does. It escalates, it feeds each other. Radicalism feeds it. It is terrible, and it is just like a vicious circle. So I would like to do something that is very interesting tonight. I want, when I invited Jon Stewart to my show, as much of like a reception that if you see on the YouTube, people just like, we had to cut the 5-minute standing ovation for broadcast. People were on their feet for 5 minutes. They could not believe it. I remember Jon Stewart telling me I could never imagine that a Jewish guy from New Jersey would have that kind of reception in Cairo. And yet, on the internet, people who would, what? You brought a Jew on your show? Why you are with a Jew? Yes, hate is there. Yes. So. And the thing is, like, why we do not see each other, people in the Middle East, people in the West, that we do not put ourselves in each other's shoes. And I want to do something very interesting today. I want to give, I like telling stories. And I'm going to tell you a very nice story. And this is the story, surprise, surprise, of the suffering and the plight of the Jewish people. And I want to say that because it is very interesting when you see the trauma and the suffering that the people on the other side went through, you might understand why they're coming. So this is, see this? This is a map of all of the history of the expulsion of the Jews in Europe. They've been like, I have never seen a minority being kicked around this much, right? And of course, this comes back to the, you know, the whole idea about the original sin, that you have betrayed Jesus Christ. The blood of Jesus is on your hand. And then comes the 11th century. At that time, Jewish people were not allowed to own land. They were just peasants. Even some of the professions they were not even allowed to participate in. But they were allowed to do one thing, usury, money lending, because it was prohibited by the Catholic Church to engage into that. So what happens when you work in money? You get richer, right? And those Jews lived in ghettos. Now, ghettos was not just like isolated neighborhoods in cities. Sometimes ghettos were outside the city. This is like how isolated they were. And in those ghettos, they have to pay gold to the mayor or the governor or the prince or the noble. So they would see, you're getting richer. I need more taxes. So they pay tax. What happens when you have a business and they increase your rent? You increase your service, increase the taxes. So what happened? The Christians started to default. And suddenly, the image of the greedy Jew was created. Shylock, merchant of Venice. If it will feed nothing else, it will feed my revenge. You know, like never did I see a creature like, you know, I can't remember that. Never did I saw like a creature that looked like a man so keen and greedy. Confound of a man. You know, English. I messed it up. Anyways, but this was the image, greedy Jew, the greedy Jew. This was created because of their conditions, and it became worse in 1095, when Pope Urban II called for the first crusade to go and save the birth of Jesus from the unbelievers Muslim. And you know, this crusade did not kill a single Muslim. You know how many people they killed? 2,000 Jews. Because it's like, wait, the non-believers are all over there. Why? So they went to it's called the Crusades of the Rhineland. So they went to the Jewish community because, hey, we own the money, so let's kill them better than paying them. And then came the plague. And then all of the things like, oh, they're killing babies, who would do that to a baby, you know? And they accused them of poisoning the well. This was the kind of oppression that the Jewish people went through. Fast forward 19th century, there was like the Eastern Jew in Ukraine and Russia, and there was the Western Jews in Europe. Those people in the Eastern Jews had to immigrate because there were pogroms and they were like, you know, kicked out. And at a certain point, the people in the West, especially in England, it's like, there are too many Jews. We need a solution. A solution for what? for the Jewish problem. So it's like we need to get rid of them. And you know what? Palestine was not even on the A list. Palestine was on the B list because England proposed 6,000 square miles in Uganda for the Jews, 1903. And the reason why Palestine was not on the list, that it was objected by a lot of rabbis that said, like, it's a promised land, but only when the Messiah comes. But there were other options: Argentina, South Africa, Uganda, Madagascar. And eventually they said, all right, let's do Palestine. So they went to Palestine in 1914. There was 700,000 people living in Palestine, 3% were Jewish. 1917, Balfour Declaration. Arthur Balfour, he called the Jewish people in England that they are alien and hostile race. And the thing is, the only Jewish member of the parliament, of the English parliament, Lord Montague, he objects, like, these are British citizens, we should not kick them out. So they pushed them, but it was not going fast enough. Came the Nazis. And then it was not about the solution anymore. It was the end losing, the final solution by Hitler, because he needed an answer for the Jewish question, the Judefrage. And then, as you see, the Holocaust happened, the most orchestrated, industrialized, horrible genocide in our modern time. 6 million Jews died. So it accelerated, and they went. First of all, they left Eastern Europe, and they went to West Europe, and they went to America, and they were turned down, and they were pushed towards Palestine. So by 1948, right before the declaration of the State of Israel, there were 2 million people living there. Only 30% of them was Jews. So the whole idea of, like, a land without a people to a people without a land was a marketing thing. They were already Palestinians. So suddenly, from our perspective, the Jewish problem is not a Jewish problem, is not a Middle Eastern problem, is not an Arab problem. It is a European problem. It was pushed on us together with the guilt, because now we are the anti-Semite. Now we are the Jewish hater. And not just that, they took land. So people look at this like, why are we even, we had a lot of refugees coming in. And during that, there was a lot of, as you know, Zionist militia, the Aragon, the Haganah, all of these people were killing Palestinians. The famous massacre of Deir Yassin. You're talking about the atrocities of October 7th, it's horrible. But in the Arab mind, there is Deir Yassin, where there is an incredible movie called Tantoura, Tantoura, where the Israeli members of those militias, they talk about the atrocities that they did, including opening up the pregnant women's bellies and having bets if the boy inside is a boy or a girl. It is one of the most horrific, and they talk about it, some talk about with regret, and some talk about with pleasure. We did that, right? So you have even King David. I think your Prime Minister, Mr. Sunak, was there. And if I was British, I would question this. Because as you know, King David was bombed by the Aragon militias. 91 British soldiers died. I don't know, if I was British, how come my Prime Minister would have the nerve to stay in that hotel? I mean, you know, the ghost of the 91 British soldiers, that must be haunting for them, you see? So when you see all of that, and you see that suddenly, overnight, 1948, there were 1.5 million Palestinians, half of them, 3/4 of them were overnight pushed into refugees. Yeah. And this is why it's called the Nakba, the catastrophe. So now we have all of this building up into the minds. And suddenly this was like a conflict, a hate, a problem that we didn't have to do anything with. This was basically pushed on us by the Europeans. You see? So this is why it is important to say that. And I'm not saying that just like, oh, let's wipe out the State of Israel, let's like push them in the sea. No, but it's important when you talk about the conflict, that you talk about the root causes, right? No, there was like a vibrant Palestinian culture happening over there. And right now they are erasing this culture. Suddenly I'm thinking of like Israeli feta cheese, Israeli hummus. Oh, that's an insult. Israeli hummus, come on. I mean, take the land, but leave the hummus, man. I mean, come on. I mean, that's not fair. You are someone who's always spoken against culture, cancel culture. Right now, a whole culture is cancelled.
Let me ask you this. Jonathan Friedland is a top Jewish journalist for the Guardian newspaper. He wrote a very interesting column last week in which he said, at the root of all this, you could argue you have two sets of people with just cause, and they believe passionately in their just cause. And he was sort of advising people not to take sides unless you really understand the history. Would you agree with that? Would you agree that both sides have legitimate just cause? Not with the methodology that's taken place, and you've given an extremely detailed analysis of the build-up to what happened in 48. To me, it's pretty clear 700, 800,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homes, and it should never have happened. And that has been absolutely, I think, the root cause for so much resentment. But can you, at the heart of this debate, agree with Jonathan that you could argue there is just cause on both sides?
There is a cause on both sides, but I'm walking on a tightrope here because I'm not a Palestinian.
Yeah.
But from the Palestinian point of view, there's a lot of people. I mean, there are 2.2 million people living in Gaza. There are 3.5 million people living in the West Bank. There is 350,000 people living in East Jerusalem, and there is like 6 or 7 million people living outside. Those people, the Palestinians that were pushed out, they do not have the right to go back. Right now, if you meet Palestinians, you'll see them wearing a necklace with a key. That key is their house that they were kicked out from in Yafa and Haifa. You know, like my wife's family comes from Ramla, which is 50 miles from Gaza. And according to the law, those people have absolutely no right to go back. Even if you are a Palestinian with an American passport, they give you hell in order to go in. And yet, a Jewish person born anywhere in the world, born in Poland, born in Ukraine, no question asked, he can jump on a plane, land in Israel, and get the Israeli citizen and take a house that most probably belonged to a Palestinian. So it is not just like, it is an ongoing injustice that has been happening. Now, I mean...
Where would you criticize, if you're being fair-minded, where would you criticize from 48 onwards the behavior of the Arab side?
Well, put yourself in the Arab side. At 1948, you constituted 70% of the population. Suddenly, the UN is giving you 48% of the land, right? Not just that, I mean, the Arab regimes, because they did terribly, and see, this is the thing, like, Arab nationalism at the height of these people feed on each other. You know, because it's very, very important to have a problem. Oh, it's Israel. And for Israel, oh, it's the Palestinian. It's a very good distraction. I mean, sometimes I feel that like the Palestinian cause is very useful for both sides to stay there as attention because it's always a way to reflect. But, and this is a very important question because in the mind of the Western audience, they always thought of the Palestinian resistance or the Palestinian side as like Islamic, as militant. No. As a matter of fact, some of the early suicide bombers were female Christian Palestinians because they, like the r43l, you know, they were fighting for a land. The whole idea of Islamization of the whole cause came very later. As a matter of fact, you will find this very interesting because when I saw this, I did not believe it. This, you know, the Fatah movement, which is the PLO, the Fatah. This was their slogan. Can you see? You see there's a crescent, a cross, and a menorah. And they say unitary, democratic, non-sectarian. So basically in the 1960s, Fatah were basically marijuana-smoking, tree-hugger hippies. And yet that didn't work, right? And the thing is, I always hear that like Arabs were giving so many chances for peace. That is not true. As a matter of fact, all along history, Israel didn't give an inch of land by peace. 1973 war, they gave back Sinai because Egypt like initiated the war. 2006, they went out of south of Lebanon because of the resistance they have. Even the disengagement of Gaza, they didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart because they had too much casualties. And even the Oslo Accords, the peace treaty, the one that Isaac Rabin and got the Nobel Prize for, they did it because of the Intifada. So what is the message that Israel is giving to the Arabs? I will never give you anything with peaceful resolution. You will always have to fight for it.
Do you not think that, for example, I mean, Bill Clinton feels this very strongly, that there was a great deal to be done, and Arafat, just in the end, having indicated the whole time that if we got to this place, there would be a deal, just walked away. That was the closest that everybody came, and that actually, I mean, could Clinton have done any more than he tried to do then?
I am not, again, that's why it's very important to have people who are much more qualified than me to talk about this. But two things I can say about that. Number one, the whole thing about the Oslo Accord, there was a video for Netanyahu who was talking to the settlement offer in 2001, and he was bragging about sabotaging. He was talking to them, I was like, I sabotage, it's like there was going to be no peace. Yeah, you've seen that, right? Yeah. And in that video, if you remember, when he was saying like you have to hit them hard, 2001, no Hamas at the time. They were talking about the Palestinian Authority. We have to hit them, we have to kill them, we have to make them feel the pain. And then one of them says like Bibi, but wouldn't America kind of just like, so what? The American public is easily manipulated. 80% are with us. It is absurd. And as a new American, where I can have the privilege of being retrospectively angry, I said like, this guy is mocking the government and the people who have been with him all the time. It's like, oh, they can be easily manipulated. They can do it. And even, by the way, even Isaac Rabin, the one who actually did the peace accord, he was known famously, say, the way to actually beat those children is to break their bones, called the broken bones policy. They will like get those kids and break their bones on the pavement. So this has, the whole idea about like Israel wanted peace and Arabs only wanted to fight is a very, very bad representation.
I actually think as it's gone on, the genuine will on both sides for peace has not existed.
No.
I think it's been a deceit to the world.
No, I'm sorry.
And to the relative groups of people on both sides.
The official...
And actually a betrayal of them.
The official stand of the Palestinian Authority, and again, I cannot speak, I mean, it is very difficult to do this. The official stand of the Palestinian Authority is that we are just happy with 22% of the land. Just give us like that. Yes, there are people that dissent, but the thing is, you cannot just say, okay, let's talk about peace. And then you take away my land. Let's talk about peace. And there's a kind of like passive aggressiveness happening. Oh, let's talk about it, but I'm going to build settlements. I'm going to suffocate your cities and your villages.
See, I think that has been incredibly inflammatory.
Yes.
Worsening the situation. I think putting back the chance of peace. I mean, Netanyahu, I interviewed Netanyahu earlier this year in the middle of the big social protests in his own country. And I couldn't understand what he thought he was doing, except that it seemed to me political expediency, that he had to get power. You know, again, he had put a bunch of right-wing headbangers into his cabinet who have incredibly bad records, speak in an incredibly incendiary way about Palestinians, for example. And that he did this for power. And then he launched, because they were pushing him to do it, a ridiculous assault on the integrity of the Supreme Court, the independence of the Supreme Court. And many Israelis rose up. So Netanyahu has become, to me, a big problem. Right? And the people, all the polling shows that. Israeli people are very unhappy with Netanyahu. I don't think he's ever going to actually want to forge peace. And in fact, I think he was instrumental with Hamas in wanting to keep them in power, because he felt that that would create the split with the Palestinians, with two political groups, and that would be good for Israel.
And it was leaked in a Likud conference in 2019 that he was bragging about giving Hamas money because this is a way that we can keep Palestinians divided, and yet so we will never have one. So this is a guy who was.
But look, we can agree about Netanyahu, I think.
No,
right?
But not just Netanyahu. There's a book.
I would say most of his cabinet.
There's a book called The Fear of Peace. It's by Moshe Zimmerman. And he's an Israeli historian, and he said, like, the average Israeli citizen does not have a vision of peace. Because for 70 years, this is a country that has been, the war has been going on for, they have been expanding because of war, the military is taking over. So the whole idea of peace is not even there. It's not just Netanyahu. Like you have, I remember you have interviewed Naftali Bennett.
Yes.
And I think you tweeted that like that was like a very kind of reasonable take. Yeah.
I don't think I said reasonable. No.
Yeah. But like Naftali, he went after Queen Rania, and he called up shame on Queen Rania.
No, I didn't say reasonable. I just said this. I did a fire emoji.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just said that what he was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you about Queen Rania, and let's ask about since you've raised it, because Queen Rania accused the West of a glaring double standard. She said, this is the first time in modern history there's such human suffering, and the world is not even calling for a ceasefire. So the silence is deafening, and to many in our region, it makes the Western world complicit. Now, other people said, well, okay, if you feel that strongly, why aren't you taking in any Palestinians? Why is Egypt not taking Palestinians? Why does the Arab world want to constantly attack Israel without actually offering any place to go for the Palestinians? And what do you say to that?
That is exactly what Israel wants. And that is exactly what might actually starts Third War III. This is the war solution. These are Palestinians. These are their land. And then suddenly take them. Why? So they've been basically kicked around from their homes. And now another country should take them? You see what will happen? Imagine this. Now. And because Israeli official has been talking openly about this. It's like, why don't they just go in Sinai? Why they go? You know what will happen? Those people are going to be pushed in Sinai. And with any population, 2 million people, they are living in refugee camp. What do you think will happen? Unrest, chaos. And then after a few years, the Western media will come with their cameras like, oh, look at those Arabs. Oh, they're killing each other. Oh, Israel is good that they got rid of them. And then they will go to the West Bank. And so those 3.5 million people push into Jordan. The whole idea, why does Jordan take them? Why does Egypt take them? The same question. Europe has 44 countries. Why don't they take Israel? America has 50 states. Why don't they give them Florida? I mean, we seem to complain about Florida the whole time. Why don't they just like give Israel? The whole idea was like, oh, you're Arabs, you're all the same. No, no, no. Because what will happen then? So Israel will move into Jordan? That's like, oh, Saudi, why don't you take the Jordanian?
So
this is not a solution. This is not a solution.
Bassem, I hear you. I'm not taking a position either way. Let me ask you directly.
But I want to say something about what Queen Radia said.
Okay.
The whole idea about like the West.
Yeah.
I think that in 3 weeks, Israel morally corrupted the West like no other. I think the West will have a lot of time to recover because for years, the West has been telling us, oh, look, we're liberal. We're all about human rights. All are equal. Adopt our values. And then suddenly, well, you don't want to even to cease. We don't want to even tell Israel to stop. And suddenly we woke up and we found McDonald's are giving free meals to the Israeli because like nothing will make you feel better after killing a bunch of Palestinian kids than a Happy Meal.
So let me ask you this.
They have a toy.
So this brings me to Hamas, okay? So what Israel will say, because they say it to me every time they come on the program, whoever from Ehud Barak to Naftali Bennett, whoever it may be, they say, look, we suffered such a catastrophic terror attack on October the 7th that we have decided we are going to get rid of Hamas. There are 40,000 or so Hamas terrorists in their eyes who need to be got rid of. And I do believe they're terrorists. Only terrorists can commit the kind of act of terrorism we saw. So can we, on that point, can we agree on that? Do you believe Hamas is a terror group?
It is classified by America as I'm not a big fan of Hamas, and they are a militant group. That does like stuff that...
Are they terrorists, do you think?
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So we agree on this. So you have 40,000 of them living in Gaza amongst the civilian population. If Israel has decided to eliminate a terror group, Hamas, as the world did with ISIS, for example, and I think there are a lot of parallels given the way they behaved on October the 7th to ISIS, how do you do it? How do you do it if you don't do it the way Israel is currently trying to do it?
Exactly not the way that Israel does it, because if you have one of the most advanced military powers in the world, and it takes you 3 weeks, 9,000 Palestinian civilian death, 21,000 injured. As we are talking right now, Israel just bombed Jabalia, which is a known refugee camp. This is not self-defense. You know, like one of the most questions, like, does Israel have the right to defend itself? This is a no-value question. This is a no-value question.
Well, I would ask a different point. I would say, not only do they have a right to defend themselves, which every country would after a terror attack, right? But they actually have a duty and responsibility to their population to try and stop that happening again to them.
They've been doing...
And I do understand, and I agree with that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If it takes you all of that time, all of these civilians, to take out a few hundred guerrilla fighters...
We don't know how many of the people...
A few thousand.
We don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but Bassem, you don't know and I don't know.
We don't know, but
right?
like...
We don't even know if the casualty numbers are correct because they're all coming from Hamas.
And we and we should believe Israel?
No, not necessarily, no. I don't believe either side.
But here's my problem with Israel.
But here's my point. I don't think we should assume that we know these statistics are correct. I don't think we should assume we know exactly how many children are being killed. We do know a lot have been killed, so the moral argument remains the same. But we don't know how many Hamas terrorists have been killed in the last 3 weeks? We just don't know, do we?
So basically, we're dealing with a very incompetent military force that has been sucking America dry for years, and then they cannot do the job.
But how else do they get rid of Hamas?
Not like that.
How do they do it?
I don't know, but not like that, because they've been trying.
But you've got to have another.
They have. First of all, I'm not a military expert. Second of all,
understand.
Second.